Hi, and welcome to Matt Holman Talks Mental Health, the podcast where I have the opportunity to sit down and chat to amazing humans about their journeys and their stories with mental health. For this episode, I'm so happy to introduce Lauren to the conversation. Welcome, Lauren.
Hi, Matt. Thank you for having me on. So brilliant to be here. Thank you.
No worries. You're more than welcome. It's lovely to have you. Just very briefly, what I'll just explain to everybody how we got to this conversation, and then I'll let you do a proper introduction, let people know who you are and what you do as a job and everything else. Then we'll get into the big conversation around mental health. So Lauren and I, we've known each other for a few years now, and Lauren actually trained with me to become a mental health first aider at some point during this long conversation that's been going on. It feels like for years since we first got together and had that conversation. But it's just a pleasure. We've stayed connected through social media and follow each other's work, which is fantastic. And we'll talk more about that as we go into the conversation. But it's lovely to have you, Lauren. Thank you for coming on and being a guest as well. So do a little bit of an introduction, better introduction than I've done, to what you do and who you are.
Fab. Thank you, Matt. So the work I do, I'm a lawyer. I'm also a coach, mentor, and human design specialist, primarily for lawyers and corporate professionals. And I'm also the creator and host of the Legally Different podcast. And if I share a bit about where the name Legally Different came from, it might give you more of a flavor for me. Legally Different, it, it, it centers on two things really. Firstly, my own journey, which I think has been legally different. I always say I'm not your average lawyer, and I've taken a different track for a number of reasons, but one of those reasons being to prioritize my mental health. And then the second reason behind the name Legally Different is to give lawyers and any humans really who connect with the podcast and the rest of my coaching work a permission slip to be themselves, to tap into what makes them unique, to find their legally different sweet spot and zone of genius, that being your purpose, your passion, your values, your talents, because I really passionately believe that the more we're connected to these things and the more we bring them into our work, the more fulfilled we feel, which has so many different ripple effects, but one being on our mental health.
Amazing. Well, I'm already intrigued by all of that. And there's a reason why you got there, right? And that's the big question. That's the big part of this conversation is you to tell us a bit of a story about your journey with mental health, why you're so passionate about these topics. So I'll put that over to you, Lauren. You define what it means and how it comes out.
Absolutely. So, track back around 7 years ago, and I was working in the terms big law, but like a large corporate law firm. And in many ways, I was successful. I'd sort of ambitiously pursued this role to be like a qualified lawyer in a great firm. And there were so many things to be grateful for, and lots of life was great, but there was always like a missing piece. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I was definitely had a number of mental health challenges. I'd say anxiety, and I was close to burnout. But the interesting thing is, I had no idea at the time. It's only when I made huge changes and could look back and thought, whoa, I had normalized so much. So we'll come on to the changes I made, but reflecting back, it was kind of, I call them soul nudges, little nudges that told me to make a change, that told me, there's something else for you. There's a different purpose for you. This isn't necessarily what you're here for. You're here to do things differently. And I kind of followed those nudges, even though they didn't make sense to a lot of other people, even though I had a great career on paper. And I'm really glad I did, because they just sent me on a whole new trajectory. And it was, looking back, I was like, whoa, I was close to burnout. I think I saved myself from burnout at that point. Um, and the change I made at that point was to quit my career and go traveling, take a career break to take stock of everything. And long story short, that led to me traveling to a number of places, but including Bali. So this is around 2017. And it was in Bali, I decided I want to live here. I want to make it happen.
Oh,
And this
yeah.
was really before the digital nomad movement. It was before 2020, when remote working was a thing. I thought, how can I make it happen? So I set about, yeah, making it happen. That was when my coaching business was born. And I also found a forward thinking law firm that were very open and happy for me to work remotely from there as a self-employed consultant. So, and then yeah, that just sent me on a whole other path, and we can go down that. But I guess bringing it back to where I was before, working in this large corporate law firm, having made the changes, and Bali is such a wonderful place for kind of healing and recovering and doing inner work, could really reflect back and see how I'd normalized so much, and I hadn't recognized the unhealthy patterns I'd created, and that I was so close to burnout. So, for example, I definitely had anxiety, but I didn't even give myself permission to acknowledge it. And that showed up in things like not really sleeping well at night, the Sunday scaries, not want every piece of work just feeling like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it, rather than, welcoming it in or seeing it as career progression. What else? Like alcohol consumption. I mean, I was drinking a societally acceptable amount of alcohol. There weren't like major problems, but when I reflect and how much I drink less now, it was a huge amount, but it was so normal, like the Friday night drinks, then drinking at the weekend, and those kind of patterns. And yeah, a number of other things. But yeah, that was a huge sort of realization for me, how I'd become so disconnected from myself, I guess, and had normalized things because it was what was being done around me. Like you power through, and you're resilient, and you keep going, and it's meant to feel like this, and you're meant to work all these hours and not be sleeping well and all the things. So, but I'm very grateful for those inner soul nudges that took me to kind of that new place.
Wow. Inner soul nudges. There's a new language
Yeah.
I've not heard before, but I really like the idea of that. And it's difficult, isn't it? Because two things can happen. You can either have the inner soul nudges, as you call them, which sort of guide you well, or you just crash, and that's the risk, isn't it? So in terms of sort of where you were then 7 years ago, when things were changing and evolving for you, people around you, so what would they have seen if you hadn't have changed? What would have been going on at that point, do you think? How was
Oh,
relationships?
good question. I think on the one hand, certain relationships were still fruitful, and I was
Mm.
still quite good at with my boundaries at work. I was never one to do all-nighters, so I had a relatively good balance in that context, and I could still value certain, relationships. Like my sister, we lived together at the time in London, and my best friend. But there were things like cracks showing where I'd get irritable with my sister, for example, or I wouldn't enjoy things with her. Like, let's say we were out doing something really fun or interesting at a weekend. I'd maybe like start to get anxiety because I think, well, I just want to go back, I want to prepare for work, or I might be thinking about a work matter that I had to go into on a Monday. Um, and yeah, yeah.
Mm. So do you think others would have seen those cracks? So obviously little signs in there, definitely. But
Mm-hmm.
when you changed them, how was Lauren after that? So what would they have seen next?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, a whole 360 turnaround, I think. I was just so much more vibrant, healthy. I was loving life. I think
Right.
it was really obvious how I'd gone from, and again, I didn't know I didn't enjoy my work at that point, or had become detached from it somehow and wasn't passionate about it as much anymore, or the way in which I was working anyway. It became so apparent just, yeah, from the outside, the way I was living and working in Bali in particular, how much it was nourishing me. I really found like I'd found my purpose doing like the coaching work and even the legal work. When I began to be a lawyer again, it made me realize, wow, it was never the law that was bad, or the practice of law, it was the way I was doing it. And it was a total reframe. And yeah, like my sister's a great example because she's been through that journey with me, and she just saw the whole shift. I mean, even my hair, it's a small example, but I remember I used to kind of straighten it so much. I couldn't, I just always straighten my hair for about an hour before work. I'd never have it naturally like this. But during that period, like, this is one of the things I feel like I've embraced about myself, like my authentic self,
Yeah.
accepting my hair as it is, even though it seems like a small thing. I really felt more me.
Yeah, but is it? But you're right, though, aren't you? It's the way that we see the world, or we think the world expects to see us, and we
Mm,
present ourselves. And that thing about masking, we were talking about this a little bit before we came onto this session, and it's so challenging for a lot of people, isn't it? Because you put on the face every day, you do the hair every day, you just make it look like everything's in control, and it isn't. And that's
mm,
what we're seeing a lot of course, in the type of work that we're doing, right? Is people
yeah.
are starting to say, I just want to remove this mask. It's almost like walking through the front door and saying, kick off the shoes, take off the mask and everything else, and all of a sudden you find you're a totally different person. So do you
Hmm.
feel now that you're more genuine, authentic because you liberated yourself in many ways?
Absolutely. Yeah. I really feel like, yeah, I'm more myself. So even in my capacity as a lawyer is probably the best example because there's a direct comparison to the pre-lawyer me and the now lawyer me. Like just more real and don't feel like I need to be a certain way for clients and then but it's interesting because you create deeper connections like that and I've really seen the impact definitely in my legal work.
Hmm.
um
So do you feel like the relationships are stronger because of this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a great way of explaining it, definitely. And yeah, just more real. That's like the best way to
Hmm.
describe it. Yeah.
It's
Mm.
interesting, isn't it? And it links into the human stuff that you do, of course. And I find that fascinating. But before we go to that, I do
Mm.
just want to link into the anxiety piece, because obviously, anxiety is something that many people struggle with. Could you put your finger on where the anxiety came from when it first started to sort of show itself?
Yeah. Again, it's sort of reflecting in hindsight, looking back. I think for me, it was partly the workload, the amount I had
Yeah.
on, and the fact that we were expect to work 9 till whenever. Not It's not 9 to 5, it's
Yeah.
more than that. And I've
I do,
realized
yeah.
how I work optimally now. And one reason I now work for myself and in a legal capacity, I'm a consultant, so I can kind of cherry pick the work I do. And obviously, I work for myself in my human design business. Um, is so I can be more free. I can have a
Yep.
more spacious schedule. I've realized how much I value. Well, freedom is one of my top values, which is something I had not considered before. I didn't shape my traditional legal career based on the value of freedom,
Yep.
and now it's at the center of so much. So when I lived as a digital nomad, that's a prime example of living with lots of freedom sort of externally. But now I've been like based in the UK for the last few years. Freedom has looked like having a spacious calendar, doing my routines in the morning and starting the day in a grounded way, choosing if I want to go on trips and work away remotely. So really for me, I just comparing again, it's like the workload and when and how I do it. I think it was really prescriptive before, and I know things have changed anyway since 2020 a little bit, even in the legal world. But yeah, definitely workload was a key thing for me.
Yeah. And again, it links into the real lives of so many people now, people listening to this. The first thing when I talk about stress in training, or, in sessions with people, we ask what's one of your biggest stressors? No surprise, workload. Most people
Hmm.
are struggling with the demands of whatever it is. And do you think workload is a business issue, or do you think it's an individual issue?
Oh, good question. I think it's both.
Right.
Um, I think from a business perspective, obviously they look at it like, well, the more work you do, the more money we make,
Right.
although that's a very narrow view because especially if
Yeah.
someone's going into burnout, then they're not going to be as productive.
Mm.
But I also think it's individual in the sense that ultimately we are responsible for the decisions we take, for the work we say yes to. And I know sometimes there is an element of, oh, I have to do that. But what is even behind the I have to take this on? Like we choose to take on these jobs. And I know it's for valid, sensible reasons, for money, our survival. And then on a day-to-day basis, we are responsible for what we say yes and no to. So we can put boundaries down. We can, there are ways we can navigate it or, speak to certain managers about how we're feeling. So I think it's like a co-creation.
Mm. Yeah, I do agree, and I think one of the fears, a lot of it's fear based as well, isn't it? Workload.
Mm.
So if I look like I'm not working very hard, or I haven't got a lot of work going on, then there's a fear of losing my job, or being seen as maybe not you get it. It's all performance based
True.
here, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
do worry about that with people. Some people make themselves look busy just for the fact that they just want to make people feel like they're important, I guess. So it's
Exactly.
so powerful. And I do think, sort of Jerry Maguire springs to mind when it's like, quality over quantity. And it's a challenge, isn't it? Especially when you've got businesses that want to make loads of money. And, if you're driven by a purpose, which I know we're both very much purpose driven people, it's very much of let's help more people. And, and
Yeah,
that's the focus, isn't it? So yeah,
absolutely.
so many
Yeah.
incredible things. So talk to me about human design then. Talk to me about sort of where you are, what you do, and the coaching side. I'm fascinated by this.
Yeah, so I guess tracking back a bit, I've always been so interested in people, a bit like you, like human behavior. And it's one thing that drew me as well to do the mental health first aid certificate with you. And like looking back in even in the traditional law firm, I was a great sort of observer of people and like was quite good at like spotting like people's talents or where they'd be better placed and how talent could be used in a more optimized way. So, track forward to kind of living in Bali for that period of time. I did my coaching certification and just wanted to get a bit deeper into that. And then I came across this system called human design, which is a part spiritual and part science system,
Okay.
which is I like to say it's a mix of Myers-Briggs meets astrology. So,
Right.
Myers-Briggs, the
Yeah.
personality test. It's like that. It kind of assesses your personality, but it's based on your time, date, and place of birth.
Okay.
So, depending on how you view these things, it's either woo or oh, really interesting, and that's the camp I set in. It's founded in science as well, but quasi science with spirituality.
Yeah.
And basically, but based on your time, date, place of birth, you can pop that into I have a charting system on my website actually. If anyone listening wants to run their chart, so legallydifferent.com, you can get your chart on that.
Yeah.
You put your details in, and this body graph of yourself pops up. And it probably would look a bit wild if this is your sort of first experience with human design. It's a lot of lines and numbers in the shape of a body, but basically each of those things tells you a gift, a talent of yours, how you're designed to optimally work, and so much more, make decisions. And I was just fascinated by this when I came across it, and also learning my particular design made so much sense. Yeah, there's 5 different headline types, which you could call them personality, and I'm a projector, and we're kind of here to work more efficiently, smarter, not harder. There's a million different things, but it just totally resonated, and I just thought there's so much in this. So I trained in human design, and now I kind of merge that with my coaching, and I find that it's a really helpful tool. So I do like human design sessions just to present this to people and go like, this is you. And often, sometimes we're not given like permission to see certain gifts in ourselves. Or we might be conditioned to work a particular way, like think that only 9 to 5 is a possible option. But when you can see your body graph and maybe it's sharing, oh, you work better in ebbs and flows or
Yeah.
in one go and then with long periods of rest, or you're really, just using a lawyer example, you're really you're really empathetic and you're gifted at making connections and building bonds, but perhaps you've built your whole career on being really litigious and it hasn't quite felt right. It can really give kind of a permission slip and an indicator of
Right.
your purpose and a direction to be more fulfilled.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm going to go and check it out.
Yeah.
And I'm going to encourage everybody listening to go and check it out. Go on to
Yeah, I'd love to know
legally.com.
your if you do,
Yeah.
I'd love to know your design, Matt. Yeah.
I mean, I'm really intrigued by that. As I say to everybody that I do or have these conversations with, I love learning stuff and I love to sort of get feedback. And yeah, I'm definitely going to be doing that. You know what I'm going to be doing straight after recording this now? It's like, I'm going to have a look. I want to know what's going on in there. It's like, oh my God, yeah, well, yeah, encouraging others out there if they want to go and have a look at it. So when you did your first then you
Hmm.
said you sort of aligned to it a lot, you saw it. What sort of things sort of stood out for you? What was the sort of the key? Did it come out with sort of a key thing that says this is like the strength or the strongest part of your personality?
Yes. So I think for me, it was, I got more into sort of my gifts and talents at a later stage. For me, it was like the working ways that really hit me when it said, so I'm a projector, so I'll just share, especially for anyone listening who's a projector or they want to compare against other types. We're really here to, um, we need a lot of rest in our work. We're not like the generator type. They can go a bit more and a bit more aligned with working 9 to 5. We need more rest. The more we rest, we charge up our batteries. And I know that's the same for all types, definitely. But we're here to kind of work smarter, not harder, bring new working ways to others, make things more efficient. We're strong coaches and guides because we're really good at sort of seeing into other people and connecting with other people. So I think they were the key things. And I could really see how I'd built my traditional law career not based on that whatsoever. And how actually I'd already began to realign with being a projector, sort of the yeah, with the different gifts of being a projector. I've naturally began that process, but seeing it like that gave me sort of permission to be like, wow, I am really on the right track. I knew it anyway, but it was like, this is
It
the right track
validates it.
for me. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like it felt right anyway, but this is, yeah, the right path for me.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping I'm a projector. That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping I'm a projector now from what you shared, because I think, oh my gosh, that's me. No, I
you
don't know. I don't
you
know.
do have a lot of projector qualities, but just
Oh,
even if you're a different type, you can still be those things I said, but
oh,
for deeper, more detailed reasons. Yeah, in the
oh no,
team.
I'm fascinated. I've
Yeah,
done all the other ones that you talk about, Myers-Briggs and things like that in the past. I can't tell you which letters I was, but
yeah,
they definitely were true, whatever it was that came out.
yeah,
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 it's
yeah.
fascinating. So I'm going to go and have a look at that, and I really would recommend others do it as well. So in terms of sort of the last few, we can just focus on sort of the past 2020 sort of years, and the last couple of years or so. How have you found sort of the opportunities to sort of grow awareness around these topics? Have you found it's been very, well received, or have you found it more challenging? I don't know. Tell me.
Yeah, so around the topic of human design or mental health,
Well, both
or
for you.
both. Let's cover both.
Let's
Yeah.
cover both. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I think there has been a huge shift, especially since 2020. 2020 is when I launched my podcast, the Legally Different podcast, and I was spotlighting lawyers doing things differently, including those, you know, who had left the law and become things like Reiki teachers. And I think at the time it was a bit like, ooh, people weren't as ready for it. But I'm really sensing, I'd say, particularly in the last year, people are definitely more open to varied career directions, the concept of human design and bringing spirituality into things. And I would say the same for mental health. I mean, I'd love your perspective on it as well, to see how you've seen companies respond to it. But definitely 2020 was just a huge milestone for a number of different reasons, but particularly for mental health. And I think it put the spotlight on mental health, and companies began to realize, wow, we really need to begin to take responsibility for this. And I know that that has been happening in law firms in particular from 2020, and I think that momentum is just growing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know what you've observed.
I think it is, and I think there's sort of, we're on a wave. There's different waves that come, aren't there? And we
Mm,
sort of hit this wave after COVID where everybody went, right, now we need to think about the people. And I'm not saying people didn't consider the impacts of people during COVID, but a lot of it was more based on employment and money and retaining in staff and things like that, versus the softer side of emotions and feelings and the challenges that people were going through. So I think we saw, well, from a business perspective, I can tell you, sort of as we came towards the end of last year, I saw things were dropping off again. So it's almost like it comes around in cycles. I don't know if you saw the same, but sort of like businesses have gone, well, we've done a lot of it already. Can sort of start slowing down a bit on the investments in that. And now this year we're seeing it coming back again, and it sort of goes through these waves, I sort of call it.
mm,
But I do think that if we align it to the reality of things like burnout in the workplace, the increase in burnout and the challenges, then you look at the spiritual side of meditation and mindfulness, the growth of those areas. There is something definitely going on. There is definitely something changing. More people
true.
struggling, and they're looking for something. They're seeking something to change.
Hmm.
We need to, my personal respect, perspective is we need to invest in ourselves first in all of this. And, we're very much advocates of that. We've talked about that, together. But it is that people struggle with right now. And it's that
Mm,
prioritization, isn't it? When I've got so much work to do, I don't have enough time to do things for me. And
absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
that's part of that
Yeah.
risk. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it all connects.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Oh, it's interesting to hear that perspective. And something you said there just made me think as well to share that. What I've noticed, especially with like lawyers coming forward for human design readings, is I think there is like an awakening happening. So whether the companies are on board or not, like the individuals are starting to say, I can't work like this anymore. I need something different. I need to find my purpose, and I'm finding that really encouraging. And it's interesting to see that movement. And as well, sorry to bring it back to the legal space, but I think it's a really interesting industry because it's so like rigid and traditional. But there's like a couple of people in my sphere who've become friends now, and like one of them's wrote a book called The Empathetic Lawyer, and
Okay.
it's like, wow, the fact that that book exists is just, I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
One other friend goes by the name of the Heart Centered Lawyer on Instagram. And I just think, wow, I think we're really stepping into this like new
Yeah.
era where people want to lead differently, a bit like you and the conversation we were having before. Like it's about purpose, it's about being human, it's about leading from the heart. So it'd be interesting. And I'd say these are themes that have come up maybe in the last year or so, but it'd be interesting to see over the next few years how much they gain momentum.
Yeah. I know you're right. And I think that's it, isn't it? If you go back 5, 10 years, those conversations weren't taking place and there has been progress. And I think that's what it is, isn't it? It's work in progress. I don't think there's a finish line, it's done. But my attitude to this is the more we talk about these topics as human beings, together, and we open up conversations, the more aware we become. And when we're aware, we can change. I think the other side to it, as you were talking there, is the constant bombardment of negativity that we see. So why is it people are struggling more than ever? Well, because actually some of it, I believe strongly, is because we keep being told how much we're struggling, how bad things are.
True. Good point. Yeah, you're right. I hadn't quite thought of it from that perspective, but you're right. Yeah.
It does
Yeah.
drive negativity, doesn't it? We're
Yes.
pre-programmed to think negative first, and all we see is bad stuff. And
True.
God forbid, there's a whole host of positive people out here who genuinely want to make a difference by saying, find your passion, find your purpose, find your soul, find your,
Exactly.
whatever it is. And it's hard, isn't it? Because then you get pushed back negatively by whatever it is. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
There you go.
And
Pop that in your human design piece.
yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
on that, a slightly different subject, but I think like collective negativity. I think
Mm,
one thing that's really helped me in my journey is not watching the news as much.
mm,
It used to be almost part of my morning routine as a traditional lawyer, and now I realize, oh, I am like an empathetic person and quite sensitive to these things, and it doesn't serve me to absorb it all the time. But I think someone said to me, how can you be a lawyer and not check in with the news? And it's like, it doesn't make a difference. Like, I'm still, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But I think the more we connect to what our personal mission is, like, we all can't do everything, we all can't save the world, but we can do what we're here to do, whether it's helping people with mental health, and that has a ripple effect with helping wider issues in the world, or helping people find their purpose, whatever it is. We can't all be missionaries at absolutely everything. Yeah, so I think that brought me a lot of peace when I realized I didn't have to absorb everything and understand all the issues in the world, even though I do care about them.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
No, absolutely. And
Mm.
it's about that control and influence, isn't it? There are things you
Mm-hmm.
control, or there are things you can influence. And actually a lot of the stuff that we see on the news is outside of our control. We can't influence what's going on. It's we just have to recognize that. And no wonder anxiety is growing, the uncertainty of the future, the worries, concerns, and things that people are going through. But maybe that is why things like what you're doing will help people, because then you focus on the really powerful stuff. And we didn't even talk about neurodiversity right at the end of this, but if you overlay neurodiversity into there, it's not all doom and gloom, albeit it's a struggle for people with neurodiversity, but there is some incredible support and things that people can do. It's
Yes,
humans are
absolutely.
amazing, aren't they?
Yes, exactly.
Oh,
And yeah, what makes us unique and different, whether it's neurodiversity or your passion or whatever, is is I just see it as our super strength. And yeah,
100%.
and on the neurodiversity piece, it's interesting to see how support for that's really growing. Again, in the legal space, there's some real pioneers for it. There's someone again who goes by, I think, the neurodiverse lawyer on LinkedIn
Right.
and Instagram, and
Yeah.
like it's something that law firms in particular are really paying attention to accommodate different needs and ways of working. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and
it's really
in certain roles as well, those skills and those things that people with neurodiversity can bring, they are so strong and powerful. And it's an evolving world, isn't it? We're trying to
hmm
learn. I would encourage people to learn more about who we are individually, but also to listen to how others see and perceive and their perspective of the world. Which is why I love having conversations like this, Lauren, with yourself, is because you've got a very unique perspective based on your journey, which is incredible. We are right at the end of this, though. That's the only part. It's like
Oh wow.
this is like an unedited episode, as they always are, and it's been incredible. I just want to carry on talking for another hour. Um, but final thoughts. I always just like to throw it over. If you've got anything you'd like to say, just to anybody that's listening, anything you'd want to share, or if you've got a quote or a life mantra or something that you could share with us and impart us with.
Um, I'll just share like a takeaway piece of advice, and this is something I wish I could like tell a younger version of myself is connect to who you are. The things that make you different
Yeah,
are part of who you are. They're part of what are going to make you shine. And things aren't random. The soul nudges, the things you desire, the things you have an interest in, they're not random. They're part of your path and your purpose. And the more you can listen to those things, the more you can accept and explore the things that make you unique, the more you can flourish and feel fulfilled in your work and your life.
love that. There we go. That's what we all want, isn't it? We want to feel that we can flourish and feel like we're
Yeah.
just performing, we're doing well.
hmm
Amazing. Thank you, Lauren. It's been an absolute pleasure to be with you on this episode, and I really do appreciate it. I wish you all the very best. Good luck with the human
Thank
design work and legallydifferent.com, right? Let's go. I'm going on there
Yeah.
straight away.
Thank you, Matt. And just before you cut off, hopefully we've got a little while, but
Yeah.
just to say thank you for all the work you do. I just want to say that you're an absolute light on in the world. And when you pop up on LinkedIn with one of your shares, I'm just like, thank you, Matt, for sprinkling this good energy in this space. And I think the way in which you share about mental health is so like real, and you really have a way of speaking to people. So yeah, thank you for everything you do.
Oh, that's really kind of you, and thank you. That's lovely. There we go. We'll share the kindness and the love and
Yeah.
everything else in this. Right. Oh, it's brilliant. Well, look after yourself. Thank you for this. I really appreciate it. I'm really looking forward to listening back to it. Go and do my test on legallydifferent.com. Check out, see what sort of profile I have. This is going to be interesting. I'll be in touch very soon to let you know. I might even pop it in the notes to this if I do it right now.
Yeah.
Anyway, look after yourself. Take care, and I will catch up with you very soon.
Fab. Thank you, Matt. You too.
Take care. Bye.